Hi guys, this is Dr. Aeronautics. Welcome back to the final tutorial of the DeltaGlider IV. This tutorial is on the two hover hold autopilots. And well, we're back to warm season, so the noise in my microphone will be a lot louder. So if I do Pro 200 Spec 7, that turns on automatic hover hold, where the autopilot will choose the vertical speed that I set. Now I'll explain how to use that in a few minutes. The other one we're going to go over is Pro 200 Spec 8, which is the auto descent. So what it will do is it will allow you to descend at 40 meters per second. And then as you approach the landing pad, it will begin slowing you down for a smooth touchdown. This works on any planet whose gravity and or surface pressure doesn't prevent its use. Just one note, you have to have the hover door set to auto or open, or else the autopilot will not work. You also need your hover valve open. Perform those checks before you need to use your hover engines, because there's a very thin line between, oh, I need to use my engines now, to shoot, we're going into the ground. So if I try to execute it, we'll get that error message. So that's basically what happens. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the craft flying. We'll make an approach, and then I'll demonstrate the use of both of those autopilots. Okay, so we're on approach to the base now, and being in an atmosphere, obviously we're able to fly, but we're going to have to prepare our hover engines for use when we come down. So the first thing we're going to do is check to make sure, yes, the hover doors are on auto. And what we're going to do is set the autopilot for 7 first, because 7 allows us to hold auto, or hold speed rather. So if I do Pro 200 Spec 7 and then execute,
hover autopilot engaged.
So what we're going to do is hold
Gear down.
the minimum speed we can, and then we're going to begin deploying all of our deployables, which will slow us down even further. So I put down, where's my speed brake? That's at the top. Wow, I'm pretty rusty. I actually forget where the speed brake is. A little bit of a problem, but not too much. So that's the base where we want to land. So it's going to take a little bit of manipulation to get us there. What I'm actually going to do now is activate the retros. This will take care of the rest of our horizontal velocity and allow us to turn around. Just an FYI, on Earth, this takes a tremendous amount of fuel. So don't do it. Rather, you need to plan out your path very carefully. So what I'm going to do now is go to rotation.
Rotation.
And we're going to turn around now by pressing the number pad 1 key. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to face the base, and then we'll use an amount of amount of forward and retro thrusters. And if you want to know how to configure the multifunctional displays and whatnot for what I did, look at my first set of tutorials. The ones on the stock DeltaGlider. Now our retros aren't nearly as powerful as our mains, so I'm going to begin taking out speed early on. And I can see our landing pad up ahead. So cool note that you can switch from specification 7 to specification 8 by pressing number pad 0. Now, it's important to note that 8 will not translate you. So in other words, if I kept using 8, it would have happened to land me wherever I was going to touch down, which, if I had done it right then and there, probably would have been somewhere on this apron where there may be another craft there. Okay, so check to make sure we're on rotation. I'm going to repeat the procedure again. Steer towards the base, move a little bit closer, and then once we're directly over, we are going to activate the Autopilot 8. Now in the meantime, just so we get a little bit closer to the ground, I will configure our current Autopilot to lower us at 1 meter per second. That gives us about 5 minutes to touchdown, and I would like to hope that by then we are directly over the base. So this is very similar with the hover engines running. This is very similar to moving a boat, right? And then when you run the retros, it's like using reverse. That's exactly how it works. Okay, so the graph says we're right over now, so I'm going to kill all of our horizontal velocity now. And what I'm going to do now is switch to translation. And now what we're going to do is we're going to change this vector to align with the base. Meanwhile, we're coming down slowly. Just as of note, because we're in an atmosphere, we will slowly lose our horizontal velocity, and in reality, wind would also drive us downwind. So what you would really need to do in real life is point the nose cone upwind and then use the main engines to counter any downwind effects. again, the idea is to center the green cross on the white cross. Check to make sure the landing gear is down, which it is. My keyboard is underneath my yoke, so I can't see it. I keep hitting the 2 key when I mean to hit the 6 key. Okay, and once you're directly overhead, which we are now, you want to null all your horizontal velocity until you don't have any. That's good, and we're going to transition to 8 by pressing number pad 0. And the autopilot will make a smooth touchdown. Seems that we've picked up a little bit of translation, which I'm going to kill off right now. And it knows as soon as touchdown occurs, all we need to do is press the space bar, and it's now disabled itself. The hover doors have closed. And we are back on the ground. So it's important to note that the hover specification 8 will have a maximum speed of 40 meters per second, which sounds fast, but if you're on an airless body and you're descending from 20 to 30 kilometers, 40 meters per second is too slow, and you're going to want 7. So what you do is you use the speed that you want to hold at, and then activate Pro 200 Spec 7, and what that will do is make it very much like cruise control, but vertical. And then when you are directly over the base and significantly low enough that it doesn't take extra time and waste extra fuel, then you can transition to 8 using number pad 0. But again, don't just use 8 to land, because it will not translate you. If you happen to be over a mountain when you activate 8, if you don't make corrections using translation to avoid being over that mountain, you will land on that mountain, which will be a problem. So one more thing I want to mention is that the 7 autopilot does recognize ground touchdowns, which means that if I were to use it for touchdown, there would be no problem with that.
Hover autopilot engaged.
And again, 7 recognizes touchdown. So if I set it up again, we're going back up again. Let's say I wanted to straighten myself out here. So I'm now going to straight hover.
Rotation, translation.
And what I'm going to do now, it looks like what's going on is we're a little bit aft for center of gravity. So what I'm going to do now is change our position to be more centered over the pad. And I'm doing this visually, mind, so it might not be perfect. I think in real life, an air marshal would help out with this. Okay, that's slow enough, and we'll go press the 8 key to go -1, and as soon as we touch, the engines will disable. That's it. And the nice thing is the autopilot actually disables itself. Or no, it doesn't. It just the level horizon disappears. There we go. Still had to disable it, and the hover doors won't disable until you, or close rather, until you disable the autopilot. And as you saw, the last use of 7 is to do autopilot. So, for example, if we wanted to, whoops, that's not executed.
Hover autopilot engaged.
if we wanted to do a takeoff, then we could just go up to 2 or 3, and then when we get sufficiently high, we could begin adding our main engines, and then when we get up to speed, we can reduce the hover thrust bit by bit until we get to 0, and that would basically need to be done manually. So that's it. We are done with the DeltaGlider IV tutorials. If you guys ever want to learn more or you need clarification, let me know, and I can certainly do a tutorial on whatever is going on. I would expect to see the DeltaGlider IV again in several of my upcoming series and mission videos. Up until this time, my channel's been largely based on tutorials, and that was never the intention. The intention was getting on to actually doing amazing missions. So that's coming. I'm going to do one more round of XR2 tutorials because I have really good experience with that, and I would like to share my knowledge before we move on to the missions. But that's pretty much it. Advanced topics will be talked about in the mission. So for example, if I'm doing something crazy like re-entering on Jupiter, I'll explain what I'm doing and why, because number one, it's cool, and number two, it's not exactly obvious what's going on. And that's it. I've been Dr. Aeronautics, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.